We're joined now by Dr. Kathryn Sullivan. She is the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Environmental Observation and Prediction and the Deputy Administrator and Acting Chief Scientist at NOAA. Talk to us about resilience, if you would, and what you've seen in our country in the last few disasters. How resilient have our communities become? How porous are they still?
Yeah, I think the truth still is we're making progress on talking and having a community and a national dialogue around preparedness, thinking ahead about how to react to and respond to and recover from disaster. There's a much more organized framework for those conversations at different community levels now than there was several years ago. But preparedness speaks to actions you can take so that when something is happening, you're better able to withstand it, and afterwards you can start to recover and repair more rapidly. Resilience is something else. Resilience is the notion of actions we can take, ways we can live, build our homes, prepare our communities, so that actually we bear less of an impact from the event. We can sort of roll with the punch more readily and have less of an after effect, less of a consequence to recover from. So resilience is rather a different thing. That's spottier. I think it's a harder conversation to have civically and politically. I think we need to be bringing different communities together and for longer conversations, not just quick meetings, to really get our heads collectively, socially, around the notion of resilience. It's a global reality. The populations are concentrating in coastal zones that are vulnerable to storm surge, hurricanes, water quality threats. So it's a concentration of multiple kinds of stressors and hazards where we have concentrations of populations. In our country, we tend to have more risk of economic loss and lower risk of life loss because of these preparedness and other efforts. In less developed and very poor countries, we have vastly higher risk of losing life, and although the total damages economically sound small in comparison, they're very often much, much larger percentages of the country's total GDP. So from a collective challenge globally, you think response to Haiti after the earthquake there, or response in Indonesia after the tsunami there, we are all in this together. That is the archetypal astronaut experience, that I know this is a beach ball.
You've seen it.
I've seen it. It is a beach ball. We are all living on the beach ball. And the natural systems are interconnected, and we are interconnected to those and to each other in many, many ways that are exposed and cast in sharp relief when our communities get hit by hazards.
Let's talk about ocean acidification and your concerns there. What can be done about that?
Ocean acidification has been called the osteoporosis of the sea. It is perhaps an archetype of the creeping, slow problem that's eroding the resiliency and the abundance of our ocean systems in cryptic ways, in ways that we don't see incrementally bit by bit. So we stand at a shore and still think we've got a fabulous ocean and a wonderful reef, and it's almost as if it's being hollowed out, in a sense, from within. It's a systemic problem. It is driven by the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. The concentrations we have in the atmosphere currently of CO2 would be vastly higher but for the world's ocean, which has absorbed something on the order of a third of all the CO2 in the atmosphere since the pre-industrial times.
We're asking attendees about how science and public policy can come together and make meaningful change. Do you have a sort of priority list of what you'd like to see done in the next 4 years?
Well, ocean acidification provides a great recent example on that front. The state of Washington has issued a Blue Ribbon report and associated policies around ocean acidification. Now, it's a global problem. So you might say, well, what on earth can the state of Washington do? The governor of that state, though, is looking at the real consequences to oyster and shellfish industries that are sizable components of the coastal economy, resolved that the state had to come together and figure out how to do something, both respond to and reflect to try to catalyze global issues, but also look at what they could do locally to make their economy and their communities more resilient. So there's a great example.
State by state.
State by state, frankly, at whatever level of governance. In a sense, one of the most important things Governor Gregoire did was convene the conversation. Bring the shellfish farmers, bring the scientists, bring the electeds, bring the policy folks together, and really look through that whole spectrum of candidate policies and actions and issues, from very local and granular to the broader, and find some way to act. The education process alone, the moving of that community's perception and understanding of the problem forward is in and of itself a valuable contribution. And then the framework for action that the Blue Ribbon Panel and policies provide to their citizens and businesses is another important one. So
it seems that one of the greatest things to come out of this conference is a discussion about what is leadership, how do we not operate in these separate islands, how do we come together? You're hearing that as well.
I'm hearing it as well, and it's a conviction that I bring with me from other work. It's one way a colleague phrased it once that I resonate with a lot is conversation is the fundamental and highest value social technology. And it's just an interesting mental twist to think actually of conversation as one of the technologies that we need, not just time, but actually one of the technologies that we need to engineer the linkages that we need between the scientific, the political, the civic, and the emergency management communities.
I like that. Can we tweet that out?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Sullivan, thank you very much for your time
My pleasure.
today.